What's up, my dudes?
It's Amethyst.
And Farrah.
And this week we're going to be doing a speed drawing of the character we created last Thursday, Onyx River. So, let's get to it.
I have to say, I'm honestly really proud of those eyebrows.
Yeah, they were pretty solid. I think it's interesting how delicate looking the eyes look compared to everything else. What's your process for drawing them?
Basically it depends on the character, but for like this one specifically, she didn't have a whole lot of femininity to her because, as you'll see later on in the video, she is really skinny. And instead of being really feminine with that, it looks almost sickly. So I wanted to give her like softer and rounder eyes rather than like harsher eyes, because it depends also on like the angles that you use for them. So as you can tell, I used a lot of like rounded edges for like the top lid and for the bottom lid. If I were to make those a lot more angular, they would look almost completely different.
I think it was a really good decision. Like, I didn't really think about it that way until you said that, but all of her other features are very harsh and they're not very feminine at all. And I feel like her eyes really soften her and add that level of femininity. Like, she would almost be androgynous without the eyes, I think.
Those freaking hands. I know. The hands are something I struggled with quite a bit, as you can probably tell by the accidental rotation of that one hand, 360 degrees. And then right here, there's usually a trick for doing that, and it's
that being
the arm pose that I did.
Gotcha.
I didn't do it because I was being lazy, but basically what you do is you take a circle from the wrist to the shoulder and draw a line there, and then draw a line in the middle down, and that's where the elbow would be. So you create a triangle, and it just makes it look a lot more proportional.
Gotcha. So, when you're getting commissioned for art, what are some of the do's and don'ts for requesting art from artists?
Well, a good thing to always do is to have at least like a description, like detailed enough that like the artist can actually know what they're drawing, but not too detailed as to like they have no creative liberties or reference art. Have that shit available. Like, say you have a character that has very specific markings, but you don't know how to describe them. Like, they have vitiligo.
They have what?
Vitiligo. It's where people have patches of lighter, like, light skin because it has no melatonin.
Yeah.
So, say they have vitiligo on their face and it's very visible and it's in specific, like, shapes. You don't know how to describe those shapes, so it's best to have reference images of how it looks, so the artist doesn't just basically put vitiligo wherever. Or like with animal drawings, like if your animal character has a lot of specific markings, you need like reference image or like details on how to draw that. so the artist isn't at a loss for how to do it and make your character look different. Also, color palettes. Please, for the love of God, give us color palettes.
Fair enough.
Because if I accidentally whitewash your character, I'm gonna feel like an asshole.
Oh, yeah, that's fair. I wouldn't have thought of that. Although I usually, mention skin color, I guess. I'm just bad at describing, individual features. Because, the way I describe characters is they give me a sort of, I'm going for a specific vibe. But it's interesting to me to see how different people interpret that vibe, because how you imagine a character is going to be different than how I imagine it or someone else.
Yeah.
So I don't like being too specific in my descriptions. Especially because, in my world, you're dealing with supernatural creatures, and, the Fae have a tendency to be supernaturally beautiful. And that could mean something different to all of us. And I think it's interesting to see the different ways that people interpret beauty and interpret the way someone is described. But it just never occurred to me that would make it difficult for an artist to draw them.
Yeah. Because there have been quite a few people, and this hasn't happened to me specifically, but it's happened to other artists that I've read about or seen online, where people have gotten super angry over the fact that they screwed up their character. For one, you didn't give reference. You didn't tell them what they want, what you wanted the character to look like. You were just do this, and that's it.
See, and I kind of feel like that ruins the fun of it. I don't want to see how she looks to me. I know how she looks to me. Or not she, but the character. I say she because my main character is a female. But, I don't want to see how the character looks in my mind. I already know how the character looks in my mind. I want to know what the character looks like to other people. As a writer, we try to create these characters and these settings and these events, and we try to describe them as vividly as possible, but realistically, none of our minds work the same way. So two people are never going to picture the same thing the same way. And so to me, it's interesting to see how other artists and other people read the things that I've written and interpret them, because it is up to interpretation. No matter how well or lengthy your descriptions are, people are always going to interpret it differently because we all think differently. So we're all going to receive that information in a different way, and it's going to compute differently in our minds. So to me, that's what makes it interesting. The only time I would care if it was exactly right is if I was doing character portraits where I was specifically trying to get an exact likeness of the way I intended for a character to look, so that I could put it on my website or whatever, so that people would have a reference picture for that character. But if that was the case, then I would go into extreme detail as to what I thought they looked like. But in general, if I'm asking an artist to draw one of my characters, it's purely because I'm curious how their art style would compute to my character. Your art style is very unique. And I picture characters in my head very realistically. They look to me like real people you would see out in the world. Obviously, your art style is not the least bit realism. So how you are going to interpret a character is totally different than how I would draw them if I had the ability. So, in the times that I've asked you to draw a character for me, I'm not doing it because I want you to create them exactly the way I would create them. I'm doing it because I'm interested to see how your art changes the way that they look. It's like getting a character of yourself or turning yourself into a cartoon, I think it's interesting to see how that comes out personally. Which does lead me into, how did you even develop your art style? You have a pretty unique art style. How did you get there?
That's a great question. I've been drawing since I was a kid, and it just you get a lot of inspiration from different people you've seen online, other people's art styles. So, like, a lot of it's inspired by, like, Tim Burton and just random people. Like, it's not like as unique as you probably think it is, because it's an amalgamation of a lot of artists.
Well, that's sort of what makes it unique. Is like, when I talk about your art, I tend to reference Tim Burton because it does give me that same kind of very unique vibe, although it's distinctly different from his art. Like, if you put your art and Tim Burton's art right next to each other, they're clearly not the same. I just think it's very interesting how you've combined like different styles to come up with your own that's very unique and recognizable.
Yeah. I never did get to talk about the nose. I like the nose though. Thank you all for watching the video. We hope you enjoyed.
Appreciate you sticking around this long. I'm Amethyst.
I'm Farron.
Make sure you like and subscribe. We'll be back every Thursday at 2 o'clock.